And we're live.
Live and alive.
We're live and alive. Both of those are important. The live part and the alive part, you know? So, I have to give you your proper welcome. Welcome to the Contagious Thoughts Podcast.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, man. So today, for those listening, watching, I have a very special person sitting in front of me today, truly special. And I'm going to try to not take up like the entire episode introing this guy, but we have to give him his proper flowers here. So today I have, and please correct, I might butcher your last name, but we have Brian Rashid. Rashid?
Rashid is the, I know, it's tricky. It's rarely pronounced correctly, so don't feel bad.
Rashid. All right. Rashid?
Yes.
Rashid. I have today Brian Rashid. And so this guy, he is the CEO of Brian Rashid Global. And this is a company that it helps creatives brainstorm and come up with ideas. They do recording audio, video, they'll edit, they'll market, they'll help you launch a project or launch a podcast. And honestly, I should have signed up with you guys when I was trying to launch my podcast. That would have been pretty helpful. But not only that, they'll also manage social media marketing for folks. And they'll also do like one-on-one coaching. And when I say one-on-one coaching, I mean like he's mentored like leaders, like CEOs, a celebrity chef. I even saw that you mentored a soloist to Barack Obama at the time. And she's been a soloist for like President Trump, President Obama, President Bush Jr. From what I saw, I mean, these are like heavy hitters. These aren't just like, average people like myself here, and he's given guidance and he's guiding them. And when you look at the feedback that they gave, they're like, hey, Brian has helped me to become who I became, accomplish what I accomplished. Like these are high accolades. And not only that, but he is someone that you can book for like a keynote speaker, for a conference, for an event, for a training. And last but not least, he is the founder and author of Love Letters to the World. And we're going to definitely dive into that first. I'm sure you guys are questioning like, oh, what is Love Letters to the World? And that's actually how I met Brian. But ladies and gentlemen, we have the man, and in my eyes, the myth and the legend, Brian Rashid.
Thank
Welcome.
you so much. Thank you for the kind intro, and I'm thrilled to be here and have equally as much respect for you and all that you're doing.
Thank you. So I'll give a quick disclaimer and just how I met you. So I have to tell the story because I find it quite interesting. And I was thinking about it on my way here, and I was like, wow, if this story didn't happen, we would not be sitting here today. So I'm sitting inside of a little, like a smoothie shop on the south side of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And I'm sitting across the table from a gentleman that I just met that day. And I was helping him on a website project that he had. And I see a gentleman walking through. Actually, the guy sitting across the table from me first saw the gentleman walking through this smoothie shop with his phone, like recording, like kind of walking down like between the tables, like recording everything and everyone that's there. And I don't really care because I create content, so it just blends into the background for me. But the guy that I was with, he like was really concerned about this. Like he got a little worked up, and he's like, what's this guy doing, And I was like, I don't know, man. I mean, this is, 2024. People do that, They just record stuff on their phones. I don't know. And Brian was so kind. I guess you saw his reaction and maybe even heard a little bit of what he said. Brian was so kind to come back and explain himself. He's like, hey, guys, look, I'm not posting that anywhere. I'm just testing out a feature that I just found out about on my phone. And I was like, oh, cool. He's like, yeah, I'm a filmmaker. And I was like, whoa, you're a filmmaker? Please do tell. Explain more about this.
Yep.
And he got into telling me about Love Letters to the World. So if my friend or, friend now he's a friend, did not have such a negative reaction to what Brian was doing, we would not be sitting here today. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful
Me
for
too.
that interaction. Yeah. So I want to start by just quickly saying, so I've been reading a book recently, and it's a book, you might have read it yourself, but Start With Why. And it's a book called Start With Why by Simon Sinek, and I'm, famous for butchering last names, so forgive me if I butchered that one. But in this book, he defines the concept of why as the fundamental belief or purpose or cause that's at the heart of an individual, a company, or an organization. And he believes that a company that's in tune and in touch with their why, and that why is more than just like monetary gain or fame. It's a deeper why that connects with like other human beings, that company will be significantly more successful than a company who is not in tune with that why. So I start with that because I want to get into what exactly Love Letters to the World is. I already know, but for the listeners and watchers, and what your why is, behind Love Letters to the World. So I'll give you the floor.
Sure. Thank you again for having me. It's really an honor to be here.
Yeah.
So it's been a wild ride.
Yeah.
Brian Rashid Global, I started 12 years ago, and I'm an entrepreneur, and I love, essentially at the core of everything that I've ever done has been storytelling.
Yeah.
I love storytelling. I love the art of storytelling. I love the influence that storytelling has. Going back even before I started my business, I was a speechwriter in Mayor Bloomberg's administration in New York City,
Nice.
and I was working on his reelection campaign, and I just saw the power that words have, literally to change lives, but also just to influence people to take action. And I committed myself to using that skill to tell stories for the advancement of something that was good, right? And when I started my business 12 years ago, I was pretty intentional about who I worked with because I wanted to work with people that were doing great things. And that went on to, so that was started in 2012, and then in 2020 I had planned on being around the world. I had many projects lined up, and I was, it was still in the under the umbrella of Brian Rashid Global, which was a very dynamic, multidimensional company.
Yeah.
But in 2020, I had the chance to go to Uruguay, which is a 3.5 million person country in South America, a very small country, but an amazing country. And I was planning on staying there from February 25th until March 26th. March 26th, I was planning on returning back to New York.
It's my birthday.
March 26th?
Yeah.
Really? Okay. Yeah. I was supposed to speak at Fordham University on March, I think 26th or 27th.
Wow, yeah.
And the week before my flight back to New York City, the airport closed in Montevideo, Uruguay, and it would remain closed until the end of the year. I mean, it would remain closed, and I would return back to Illinois in December.
Yeah.
And so this was kind of a wild time. This was a wild year, like everybody, like all small business owners. I was, business was totally non-existent in a lot of ways because I was speaking at conferences and I was doing video production. That was no longer a thing because no one was leaving their houses.
Right.
So,
right.
I had to let go of some staff. I had to, it was a hard time. And the first couple of months, I was thinking to myself, man, I don't know what I'm going to do here. This is kind of a bummer, and there's a lot of fear developing around whatever, was happening in the world with COVID. And there was a lot of fear that people didn't really know what this thing was. And then there's the news and all the things. So it was a weird time. Yeah. And then, but what happened was slowly but surely, I started to kind of realize that the airport probably isn't opening soon.
Yeah.
It was initially it was like, we'll reopen it in April. And then it was May, and then it was June.
Yeah.
And then I just said, okay, I have two choices here. I can either dwell on what is not, all the things that I can't do in New York and all the things I can't do with my team and my business,
right?
Or I can focus on what's here now. And I made a very conscious shift in that moment that I need to start to look for, and I said this the other night at the Love Letters event, whatever you're looking for, you'll find. Yeah. So if I was starting, initially it was like everything was kind of negative, but then I said, what can you look for that's good? And I started to look for the good, and there was so much good. Mm-hmm. So fast forward to October, 7 months later or whatever, I sat down in a cafe and I wrote. I was just inspired. I had no plan of doing this. sat down in a cafe, and I wrote a love letter.
Wow.
I wrote for hours. And then I edited it, and I wrote a little bit more, and then I edited it. But I walked out of there, and I'll never forget this, Darwin. I walked out of this, is a cafe called The Lab in Pocitos, Montevideo, Uruguay. And I walked out, and I stood on the street, and it was probably like 8, 9 p.m. The sun was down, and I just cried.
Man.
Because the soul knew that this was going to be an important moment.
Wow.
You know when you do something that's so true, you know that when you do something that's super aligned, in that moment I knew this was one of those moments.
Wow.
And so I went home, I published it in English, and then I published it in Spanish on my Instagram page that had like 1,000 followers. 2 days later, I'm sitting I'm in a museum. I'm in a museum in Montevideo, and I'm with a friend, and I open my Instagram.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if you ever experienced this. I certainly hadn't at the time, but in those days, and I think it's probably still like this, if you get more than 100 DMs on Instagram, it shows up as 99 plus in your, and I'm like, oh my God, I got hacked.
Never happened to me.
I was like, me neither. I was like, some robot hacked me.
Wow.
And I have 100 messages that are spam.
Right.
And I opened them, and they were clearly real life people that had connection to Uruguay that had read the letter. Wow. And so that started the snowball of message after message. I mean, I'm talking about thousands and thousands of messages over the next several months.
And so when you publish this letter, this is a love letter to Uruguay.
It was literally called One American's Unexpected Love Letter to Uruguay During a Global Pandemic.
Wow. And so you published that, or you put it out there on Instagram.
Yep.
Is it like pictures of the letter that you put out there, or this like?
That's a good question. What was it? No,
was it a video of the what form?
It was a written letter.
A written letter.
I mean, I had typed it. It was a typed letter, and I think maybe I did a carousel.
Okay, and people could scroll through and they could
see it, but it was all text. It was all text.
All text at the time.
And I also had it up on Medium.com, and so it was just all text. There was no video, and I think there was one picture of me sitting at a typewriter in Colonia, Uruguay, like just sitting there, and it had a big poster of Uruguay behind me, and that was it. And then it just started, and then all of a sudden, CNN comes and does a story about me.
Wow.
I'm on every single national television show. That's Good Morning, crazy. Like Good Morning Uruguay, and all these shows. Gosh. And it was so fun, and it was, so then, I left Uruguay in December, and I had felt that this was a significant moment, and this was, if this was the power of one letter, what would happen if I really thought about doing something with this? So I moved to Hawaii.
Wow.
And I'm a big believer in the power of the natural world.
Yeah.
And I spend a lot of time connecting with nature and praying to nature and feeling nature. And, and so I moved to the big island of Hawaii, and it was, again, the pandemic is still happening. There's still like a lot of rules, and there's still a lot of restriction, and business is definitely not upticking yet.
Yeah.
So I had this kind of year where I was doing some freelance writing, and I was doing some work with clients and consulting them online, but still no video production, still no conferences.
Yeah.
And so I took that year, and I said that, I might never get this chance again to slow down, to connect with nature, and to really continue to dig deep, because in Uruguay I had started a pretty robust meditation practice.
Yeah.
Kept that going, and it became so obvious to me that I needed to take this concept of this single love letter and turn it into an actual movement and into an actual platform. And that's where Love Letters to the World was born. And then I returned back to New York City in 2022 because I wanted to launch in the place that had been home for me.
Wow. So the love letters that have actually happened already.
Yes.
If you can just give the listeners an idea of what has happened. I've gotten to witness a few recently as well myself, which has been fun.
So I've taken it from, this one written letter, and I turn it into a whole multimedia, multidimensional platform, right? So we do short videos, video vignettes. We do longer documentaries. There's shorter documentaries, but they're long, like 9 to 15 minute documentaries. We do urban art installations. We just did one in San Francisco.
Wow.
And we do in-person events and activations. And the cool thing about this is that it's so early still.
Yeah.
June of 2022 is not that long ago.
No.
Right?
No.
And what's happened in the course of like less than 2 years has been remarkable. And I think that, you know, when I think about what could this be and what is this turning into, I have kind of unlimited vision around it. But right now, what it is that. So we've been in New York City.
Yeah.
We did a series of love letters to New York City. We've been in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Did a documentary film about Washington, D.C. I was invited to tour Guatemala and to deliver a love letter address in front of 1,500 people at a conference at the base of a volcano in Antigua, Guatemala.
That's sick.
It was really, really special. Again, connecting the natural world, like that there's so much energy in that volcanic, or volcanic energy. And then San Francisco did the traveling love letter in the form of a mural where people could literally write what they love about San Francisco on the mural. And that traveled between Dolores Park and a school across the street and in different parts of the Mission District of San Francisco. And now we're here in the Lehigh Valley of Pennsylvania, which is where we are sitting. And I've had I've been coming to the Valley for 20 years just because it's so close to New York. And I have a really good friend here that I visited from law school. And, you know, the Lehigh Valley is this really unique place.
Yeah.
And there's Allentown, there's Easton, there's Bethlehem, there's so much in each of them. And so I, back in August, came here to do a series of love letters with Promised Neighborhoods of the Lehigh Valley and Dr. Hassan Batts, and then also Moravian University, which is the event that you got to come to.
Yeah.
And really, so they're campaigns in some way. They're like campaigns about showing the beautiful parts of the world.
Yeah.
You know, and it's showing people, it's giving people a sense of pride in the work that they're doing for their communities. It's acknowledging people's work. It's shining light on the good things that are happening. So it's really like there's several parts to it, but the first is that it's how can we recognize everyday heroes in communities that are awesome, in people and places and natural spaces and organizations. How can we recognize you? Because the two messages that I was getting so much from Uruguay, the two most common messages were, number one, thank you for painting such a positive picture of my land.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the second thing is like, thank you for making me proud to be from here. And so I think that, you know, we all want to have some sort of connection to the place that we live.
Right.
And we want to be proud of our life, and we want to be proud of where we're from. And I think that this is a wonderful way through dynamic media, but also through in-person connections. I always say the purpose of my media work, all of my online stuff, everything that I do has the very clear intentionality of getting people offline and together in person.
Interesting.
I want people transitioning off of their screens to actually communicate with each other. But I'm also aware that people a lot of people are starting on their screens.
Right.
So we can do all the in-person stuff that we want, but if we really want to inspire somebody to say, oh my God, you know, I actually just saw this video about this natural wonder in Guatemala, maybe I'll go see it.
Right.
And now you're in these crystal clear turquoise blue waters, rejuvenating your body because you were on your phone.
Right.
But that's what I'm really interested in, is how do we use the online world to get people offline and in person and together and in nature and embodied. And so that, you know, that's essentially how we ended up here, rapid fire, bringing you up to speed for the last 2 years.
That's a good rapid fire, you know, and I was talking to my wife about this, and I mean, first she was blown away and thought it was really cool that we got to have an interview like this and have a conversation together. And I'm curious if there's ever been an attempt at a love letter that you've made that has not been received well or rejected. Like you wanted to do a love letter for a certain country or city, and it wasn't received in a welcoming way, like it was rejected or shut down, or they weren't feeling it.
So far, no.
Yeah.
And again, we're early, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I've certainly made pitches to places
Sure.
that have said like, there's not the budget, or it's not the right time,
Sure.
or we already have someone that's doing this.
Sure.
But nowhere have I written a letter that has not, been received. And it's funny because, I always love the idea of pattern recognition. And I think that you can learn a lot about life through pattern recognition. And I think that it's one of the greatest reasons to have people that are in your life that have, I would say, layered knowledge of you, right? Like deep context, I think is important. And so, I always tell people when they come to me kind of stressed out or anxious about what should I do? I really believe a couple of things. I believe the first thing is most people are actually doing what they want to do.
Interesting.
And when I say that, I mean, most people talk a lot about the things that they say they want to do.
Yeah.
But I do think that most people are kind of doing what they want to do, and maybe they want to up-level that, but maybe they don't. But I want to travel the world, and then you start to talk to them about it, and it's like, actually, I just kind of want to stay in Bethlehem, and that's totally fine.
Right.
But there's a lot of anxiety around the things that you think you want to do, but you actually don't want to do. So that's just kind of a sidebar. But the second thing that I'd say is, I think that we are oftentimes almost forecasting our futures, and I always say, you will get to your dreams eventually.
Yeah.
And I do believe that. And what I mean by that is that, and you'll get to your dreams eventually, and start now. Meaning,
like the journey starts now.
Right now. And here's here's kind of how that manifests for me. Just to give a practical example so the listeners can get some sort of value. This is kind of philosophical, but here's a practical example. When I lived in San Francisco 10 years ago, I was obsessed with this idea of getting people to stop and think about their lives. Just for 5 seconds. Everyone was living kind of it was appearing that everyone was kind of robotic. They were on their phones while walking, heads down. So I really thought to myself, what would it be like if you kind of jarred people out of their robotic existence for a second, just to think about something. So I used to go down to the Bay Area Rapid Transit, the San Francisco subway, the Bay Area subway system, basically, the train system, and I had a very small dry erase board.
Sure.
And I had a blue dry erase marker, and I used to write a prompt on that board, and they would be like, my deepest desire is, my truest dream is, my biggest regret in life is, and I would have people write on this board. This small board. And I would, the Bay Area police would like tell me to leave, and it was
like, why? Like
right, exactly. Why? Fast forward 10 years later, and I just did this massive 20-foot mural that says, I love San Francisco because. That's what I wanted to do 10 years ago. But
interesting.
For whatever reason, I wasn't ready yet. So I wanted that. And I knew I would get to my dream eventually, but it wasn't until 10 years later. Now, in the meantime, I did that. I pitched that. I created that. I concepted that. So I'm moving on it, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't always happen in the timeline that you think it's going to. And so, that's what I would say about the process of it all.
Yeah.
And so, have there been places that I've wanted to go and that of course. Yeah. Have they all said yes? No, but just the action of starting to move that ball a little bit forward, there is momentum, and I do think that really, it adds up, all of it.
That's beautiful, man. And
Even the nose.
Even the nose, yeah. And I find that really interesting. You just had a comment that you believe that most people are doing what they want to do.
I think so.
In some form, in some way. Like, even if it's like, a lesser, not to say lesser form, but a less grandiose form of whatever that dream is. And this is really interesting to me because this whole podcast and this whole movement is literally designed for dreamers, people who have dreams and either desire to make those dreams into a reality and have not, or are in the process of doing so, Yep. And so, and whatever the age range is, that they can be Gen Xers, it can be millennials. It's going to probably be not, Gen Z. There's going to be more people that are in I'll say like a dreaming kind of stage of their life that may be more attracted to this. But I think it's a really interesting concept, and I wonder even for myself, like before I started this podcast, like what was I doing that was maybe in line with this? And then on the flip side is, what about the people who they have dreams, but they just lack inspiration, they lack motivation, maybe they historically have not been a person of action, like it's just not a part of their natural way of doing things, and so they maybe need more hand holding or more inspiration, more motivation. I'm curious how that translates for those people, like, because they may say, well, I really do want to travel the world, I really do want to build a company that brings clean water to indigenous, to people in countries across Latin America or Africa, but I just watch Netflix all day. Yeah. And the Netflix shows that I watch have to do with that, but maybe I watch a lot of documentaries that are about bringing clean water to people. I don't know, but I'm just curious, like what your take is on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a highly experiential learner.
Okay.
And so watching documentaries on Netflix is interesting to me for about like 1 hour, and then I'm like, I gotta go.
Yeah.
So there's two things, right? Because I will say that, self-starting action is definitely a strength that I have. So but I want to be empathetic to the people that are not in that camp, because that's your question, right?
Yeah.
So for the people that have dreams that don't take action on them, there's usually a couple of reasons why that's happening. The first is they don't know how to take action. And so like they want to travel or they want to bring clean water, but they don't know what the first step is.
Yeah.
And that's real. Like even with me, who is a tremendous self-starter, there are moments in life where I'm like, I actually don't know how to start this.
Yeah.
And it's crippling, and it paralyzes you in a sense, because you and then you overthink it so much, and then the joy is gone. So the first thing that I would say is, like, don't lose the joy of it. Because when you overthink something so much, you actually suck the joy out, and then the momentum is gone, the inertia is gone, everything that is leading you forward is gone, because you've just killed this thing with thought. So the first thing is, don't overthink something. The second thing is, take a first step. And if you don't know what the first step is, I always say, get close to the sun. Find people who you respect that are accessible to you right now. That are doing something that you think is cool. So let's say you want to travel the world and you have no idea how to do that, and you don't really have the motivation to figure it out and resource it or research it, but you know that your aunt is taking a trip to, let's say that you live in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Your aunt is going to upstate New York to see how the water system is purified in New York City, and that's interesting to you. That's your first trip.
Right.
And really, one of my favorite things about life is, I'm a romantic philosopher. I'm a romantic poet. I romanticize everything, and it's a strength, and sometimes it's a weakness, because if you're romanticizing something in a way that's out of touch with reality, you're not actually doing yourself service. I used to do that way more than I do that now, but I think that you can really romanticize your life in a way that you can sort of create this movie for yourself, doing pretty simple things. Taking a trip to New York might be the first step. It's a 2-hour bus ride. You can make that happen.
Yeah.
You can find a friend that's going in New York. You can go in with them for the day. You can. So my first thing is, start with where you are.
Yeah.
You have a matrix of people around you for a reason. There's a web of people around you for a reason that you have chosen, whether it be in this life or a past life or whatever.
Right.
You have chosen that matrix, that web of people that are around you. So ask them, how can I make this happen? I want to travel. Where are you going? Can I come with you? That's the first step.
Yeah.
Second step is if you are not starting something and you really want to, you have to ask yourself, why am I not starting this?
Yeah.
Why? Like what? And then
like
you have
introspection.
but real honest introspection.
Yeah.
Like what is the thing that is preventing me from starting this?
Yeah.
Is it that I'm scared I'm going to end up homeless on the street?
Yeah.
If that's where you're at, and that's a real fear for some people, then you go to someone that you love and say like, hey, I'm about to start this thing.
Yeah.
I'm scared. Here's my biggest fear. And this is why people in your life is really important.
Yeah.
My biggest fear is that I'm going to start this thing and I'm going to end up homeless on the street because I'm not going to make $1 from it.
Yeah.
If that happens, can you tell me right now that I can crash on your couch for a month or two?
Just to get myself together.
And then somebody says yes, and now the excuse is gone.
Right.
So I think it's eliminating excuses.
Yeah.
I'm scared to fail in front of my dad, let's say, is another, or my
That's
mom,
real.
or my girlfriend, or my boyfriend, or my kid,
Right.
or whatever. This is another very common thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I speak at conferences all over the place, and they're saying, like, my mom and dad don't want me to do this, and they paid for my college, and now I feel a responsibility. So
That's
that
real.
it's real. You go to them and you say that.
Yeah.
Like, hey, mom and dad, I love you. I'm so grateful for college that you just provided for me. I want to start a business around blogging about bananas. And I want to travel the world finding all the crazy banana
Different
farmers
types of bananas. Just
and mango farmers and papaya. And the only reason I'm not doing this is because I'm scared that I'm going to fail and let you down.
Right. Yeah.
You would be blown away at how healing and how understanding those conversations could go.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think that's the other reason people don't start dreams is because they're scared of something that with one conversation, you could completely free yourself from.
Yeah.
And most people don't have the conversation, and they live the next 20 to 30 years of their life in fear of the thing that could have been gone in a 1 or 2 minute conversation.
Yeah.
Because most people want the people they love to be happy.
Yeah.
Truly.
And so you speak about happiness. So I've actually been very interested in this concept of fulfillment lately. Like happiness and fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, if I'm honest, that is one of my major driving factors as to why I do a lot of the things that I do is I'm searching for fulfillment. And sometimes I think to myself that when I achieve this thing, when I hit the goal, I hit the target, then I will reach fulfillment. And then what happens is, at least I'll speak for this podcast, it's like in the process, it's in the doing, in the journey. I'm like, this is awesome. I love this. And then I realize, like, you know what? I have a goal, I have a dream, but just doing this thing, just chasing this is so fulfilling for me. And that's a part of the mission of this podcast is, I mean, I see this as not just a podcast. I see the podcast as a medium for a movement of dreamers who are in pursuit to making their dreams a reality. And along that journey, there's fulfillment. And I have this article, and I want to get your thoughts, but I have a couple different definitions of fulfillment that I'm going to read. One of them is from Google, although now we can't just say Google. It's like Google AI, because they have this whole AI thing going on now. And the definition that I have is emotional fulfillment. It's a feeling of contentment and satisfaction that comes from knowing that you've met your goals, you've made a meaningful impact, or you've lived in alignment with your values and desires. And a second, I'm just going to add additional information. The listeners are probably used to this. I love quotes. I love articles. I love that stuff. But there's, on Psychology Today, there's these 10, I don't know, it says 10 steps to emotional fulfillment, but it's really like 10 qualities of fulfillment, or like 10 legs of fulfillment. And I don't think that you need that all 10 legs have to be there. I just think that these 10 things I'm about to read, they are attributes of fulfillment, or they're connected to fulfillment. So one is to be with others who make you smile. 2, hold on to your values, or holding on to your values. Accepting things that are good. So it's like acceptance. Like people might think of it as like radical acceptance. Like accepting reality for what it is, even though you may not like the reality, but accepting the reality, like being at peace with reality, doing things you love, finding purpose, listening to your heart. That's another one. To push yourself, not others. So you're not wreaking havoc on people around you. You're pushing yourself towards a goal. And the last two is being open to change, and it's basking in the simple pleasures. So there's a lot in that list, but even if you just take a hold of like 2 or 3 of them. So when I read this list, I listen to your story, or I think about your story, and it seems to me like you're living a pretty fulfilling life. And I'm just, by my own definition and by some of these definitions here, I'm just curious, based on even the couple of things that you just mentioned before about, kind of living in your, that most people are already doing what they want to do. I'm just curious, like your definition of fulfillment, or your take on fulfillment, and how is that real for you?
That's a great question. I mean, it's a hard question, right? It's a layered question. And I think that there's a couple things that I thought of as you were reading that. The first is, how do I say this? I'm a fairly goal-driven person, but I've also kind of moved away from that more and more, because the moving target is a moving target. The moving target changes all the time. And the moving target moves. That's why it's moving, right? And so I think that when you're too, in Spanish we say agarrado, like you're like holding on too tightly to something, that oftentimes, it puts you into a box. It almost makes you like a prisoner of your own ideas. And when I think about what is fulfillment to me is freedom. And that freedom looks, and here's the thing, and you're going to get this, and I think that a lot of the listeners are going to get it. Like, freedom looks different to every single person. Freedom looks really different. That's why I'm always hesitant to tell. Like, I can only share. I like that, what you said, push yourself, don't push others.
Yeah.
I can only tell you what I do to push myself, and you get to decide, and you get to integrate this in any way or not at all into your life. But what I will say is this. When I think about fulfillment, I think about there are so many layers to life that bring fulfillment for me, and they change all the time. And so I'm constantly recalibrating what I find fulfillment in. Fulfillment for me could also just be spending a week on the beach with my family. And for a lot of people, that's really boring. And for a lot of people, that's
I think that's awesome.
I think it's awesome too. And for a lot of people, that's they want to do that for a year.
Right.
I would go crazy sitting on a beach for a year not doing anything. After like 3 days, I'm ready to get back to work.
Right.
But I'll say that even within the work, the last 3 or 4 days, I've worked probably 15, 16 hours a day. That's not my norm necessarily, but it felt right for the last 3 days. That was very fulfilling. If I worked 16 hours a day for an entire year, I would probably be really burnt out. It wouldn't feel fulfilling. So I think that when I say freedom, what I mean by that is set up a framework for yourself, but don't hold on to it so tightly that you can't readjust during it because you feel like you've set up a framework. So many people, so many people halfway into their goal are like, I actually hate what I'm doing, but I'm already halfway there. It's sort of like being with a partner that you've been with for 5 years. Yeah. And after 5 years, you're like, I'm not in love with this person anymore, but I've already invested 5 years. Right. So I should just keep going. It's like, no, you shouldn't. Yeah. You really shouldn't. Right. And it's the same with goals. Yeah. And so to answer your question a little bit more directly, I think that for me, fulfillment is, am I waking up every day and the things that I have to do or get to do or choose to do are aligned with my truth today?
I like that, man.
And that first Google AI quote that you read, I think is great. I think it's missing the word truth. Can you read that again?
Yeah. So it's emotional fulfillment is a feeling of contentment and satisfaction that comes from knowing you have met your goals, made a meaningful impact, or lived in alignment with your values and desires.
That last part. So lived in alignment with your values and desires. With your true. That's the word that was missing for me. Live in alignment with your true values and desires. And guess what? That, if you can master, if you can actually admit to yourself, and that's what I mean by I think people are doing what they want. Yeah. assuming they've asked themselves that question, like, if you can actually answer, what is the true thing that I want to be doing right now? And am I doing it? Am I close to it? Am I moving? And you might not be close to it. You might be moving close to it.
Yeah.
You might be right now in a job that you hate.
Yeah.
But it pays the bills.
Yeah.
And you might be spending your nights watching Netflix. Or you might be in a job that you hate. I would say the first one, you're probably not moving closer to the thing that you want, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Or you could be in a job that you hate, and at night you could be spending 15 minutes a night messaging people on LinkedIn that you think have interesting careers. The outside world might tell you you're not doing enough. I would tell you that you're doing something, and that the simple pleasures of life, that celebrate those. You know, and so I think that fulfillment for me is, do I wake up every single day with the ability to do something that is aligned with my truth? And am I enjoying the process of it? Because
that's so good.
The goal. I mean, and people say this all the time, right? It's the journey, not the destination. And I think that is so true. But I would say also that you can actually celebrate the journey in a way that you almost forget what the destination is.
Wow.
And you can figure out, and the destination might change a million times. That's why it's so, it's like, it's
dynamic. It's not the static thing.
It's like here's what it's like for me, Darwin. It's like people say, who do you go to for advice?
Yeah.
And that's a really hard question. And here's why I think going to people for advice that you are here's why I think outsourcing advice is so dangerous. Because no one in the entire universe could ever possibly come even close to knowing you as much as you know yourself. My best friend in the world, my 5 best friends in the world who I talk to all the time, who know everything, my girlfriend who I talk to all the time,
right?
All these people, my parents who brought me into this world, who I adore, no one has anywhere close to as much insight into what's happening in my heart and soul in this moment than me. So advice is so contextually incomplete, even in the relationships that are so close, that you have to sort of like figure. And I think the same thing goes to goals.
Yeah.
No one's going to know your goals as much as you do. No one's going to know your fulfillment as much as you do. So you have to kind of figure that out for yourself.
That's deep, yeah.
And it's hard, but it's worth it.
I'm curious. So, okay, I mean, there's a lot you just said, and I love all the episodes that I do, but there's some episodes that I do where I'm like, man, I'm gonna go back and listen to this, like, for me, like like as a consumer, and just chew on this, and reflect on this, and this is definitely one of those. And I think you said a lot of deeply profound things, and I'm also curious if there's ever a time that you can remember, like in your own life, that you were not fulfilled, or that you were not feeling fulfilled. And the follow-up question to that is what the pivot was like, towards a path of fulfillment, freedom. And I have to say, too, that freedom, that is like essential. That's like a core value of mine. It's freedom. So I'm right there with you on that. But
Me too.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, freedom is a huge privilege, right? So that's another thing that I also always acknowledge, that this is a lot of, there are millions and millions and millions of people around the world that simply cannot do, for whatever reason, right? So I also think that this is a piece of it that's like, and for me, it's even more of a motivating factor. If you can, then you should.
Why not?
Yeah. Right. And so, there have been many moments in my life where I've been not fulfilled. I mean, I think that towards the end of my work in the Bloomberg administration, like I wanted to quit that job for 6 months before I quit that job. And I almost quit that job so many times every single day.
Wow.
Because I wasn't fulfilled, not because the work wasn't interesting or because my boss, I love the work. I love my bosses. I love the people I worked with. I loved it, but it wasn't true. It wasn't true. I had a million ideas that I had to get vetted, and a lot of them took forever. And I was just so ready to move. I was so ready to move on ideas. I was so ready to have my own talking points. I was so ready to have my own speeches. I was so ready. I mean, I had infinite ways of seeing how I could use my skills and talents that were not, running them through a totem pole of bureaucratic acceptance.
When you say true, just define what you mean by true, just so I track, just so we all follow and track.
In what way?
Like when you say that it wasn't true.
It wasn't the best use of my skills.
Yeah, got it.
Like I knew, and this is the thing, everyone that's listening knows, what you're good at.
Yeah.
You know what your skills are, and you know if you're offering them with the level of generosity that you want to or not. You know.
Wow.
You know.
Yeah.
You know if you're giving it your all.
Yeah.
And it's okay if you're not.
Yeah.
But just don't lie to yourself. That's my thing. Like I fall short all the time, but I'm not delusional about it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I fall short constantly, and I'm not pretending like I'm not. And when I nail it, I nail it.
Right,
and I give myself permission to nail it and to feel that. Like that event at Moravian, we nailed it.
Oh yeah, hands down.
Like it was one of the best events that I've ever been to.
Yeah.
And I allowed, and that's growth, right? Like 10 years ago, I probably wouldn't have allowed myself to say that out loud. I would have felt like I was bragging. I would have felt,
But that's true.
But that was true for me.
Yeah.
That night I felt alive. I felt aligned, and I felt like I was fully in my power for today. For that day. And the next day it changed. The next day the power looks a little bit different, and you adapt. So there are that for those last 6 months working in New York City, I wanted to quit every day. And it's funny because I remember watching a movie, I think it was called The Great Big Little Farm, or it's called We Bought a Zoo, or I Bought a Zoo or something. It was with Matt Damon. And Matt Damon buys a zoo, and his kids move to the zoo with him, and the little boy, his little boy is having a hard time with it. And I forget exactly what happened, but Matt Damon looks at him and he says, 20 seconds of insane courage. Just have 20 seconds of insane courage and everything will work out.
Wow.
And I remember watching that and thinking, like, that's what I need. I need 20 seconds of courage because that's how long it will take to say I resign.
Wow.
And I walked into my boss's office and my heart was pounding and my hands were sweating. And I said 20, and I just kept repeating to myself, 20 seconds of insane courage, 20 seconds of insane courage. Man. And think about that, Darwin. Like, think about that. And everyone that's listening, think about that, what that looks like in your life. Like, what would it, this is a challenge. This is a challenge for people listening.
Yeah.
What would it look like right now in your life if you exhibited and you acted on 20 seconds of insane courage for the thing that you know you want?
Wow.
Ending the relationship that you don't want to be in anymore, quitting the job making a phone call for a client you want to work with, asking that person on a date. Like, what would the 20 seconds look like?
Man.
And so that's how I pivoted.
Wow, man.
That's how I pivoted. And I will say, going back to my idea of like, I don't think I was ready for those 6 months. I wasn't ready to leave my job. Wow. I have someone right now that I just talked to last week, and she said, I can't believe that I've stayed in this job this long. I cannot believe that I'm still in this job. And she was like mad. Yeah. And I said, you're just not ready to leave yet. And that goes back to the thing of like, I think people, you're getting closer, and this anger that you're having will drive you in a way that you didn't know, and you don't know until you know, kind of thing. And it's sort of like the whole flipping a coin. They say like, I don't know what to do. Flip a coin. When the coin's in the air, you know which side of the coin you want it to land on.
Right.
That's your answer. You didn't actually need to flip the coin, but because you flipped the coin, you got that clarity. It's like when you have someone that's coming to visit, and you're like, I don't know if I want this person to come visit, and then the flight gets canceled, and you're like, oh, I'm so upset. It's like, good data point. Good data point, because next time you can reschedule this knowing that you are upset they're not coming, which means you actually wanted them to come. Yeah. But you needed that flight to get canceled for that clarity. And this thing happens all the time for us. These things happen all the time for us. Wow. We get little clarifying moments, and you weren't that trip wasn't ready to happen right there. For some reason, the flight was canceled. Wasn't the time. For some reason, my friend did not quit her job. For some reason, I stayed in the job 6 more months. For some reason, right? But then something will happen that will give you clarity. And those I call angel whispers. I call breadcrumbs. Follow the breadcrumbs. Listen to the angel whispers that get you closer and closer to the courage that you need to do something. And in the meantime, and this is the hardest part, don't beat yourself up about it. In the meantime, trust your divine intelligence. Trust your supreme intelligence as a human, that if you were supposed to be doing the thing, you would have done it and move towards it. Because in that momentum, with that inertia, there are more angelic whispers. There are more breadcrumbs. I do believe deeply, deeply that the universe favors the bold. And I think that the more action you can take on your truth, even if it's not 0 to 100, if it's 0 to 5, if it's 0 to 60, in that 0 to whatever, things start to happen. And in that 0 to whatever, things start to reveal themselves. And in that 0 to whatever, you start to feel, oh, actually, I want this. Yeah. Like this is now worth it for me to take some more risks. And you might be really cautious. I'm actually a fairly cautious person. I'm adventurous and I go for things that I want, but I do it with some level of caution. That's okay. You might be absolutely crazy adventurous and you want to go from 0 to 100. That's okay. I think that for me, and another really major point that I would say in this fulfillment or in this movement is you have to know the container that will be nourishing for your nervous system. And I think this is a conversation we don't have enough in modern day society. I think that there's a lot of Instagram influencers and a lot of motivational people that are like, just go for it. But maybe you can't handle that from a mental health perspective.
Right.
Maybe your central nervous system will go crazy if you quit your job with that might not be good for you.
Right.
So I think about this a lot and I tap into my nervous system a lot. There's, for as many projects as I do, there's a limit to what I can handle for my bandwidth, for what would feel healthy for me.
Yeah.
And I'm learning the older I get. I'm 41 now. The older I'm getting, the more I'm realizing, okay, here's the container that feels good creatively, that feels good health-wise, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And here's the container that feels good in terms of like how much of my time goes into this, because I have a lot of people that I love in my life that I like to spend time with. I love travel. I love food. So you have to kind of figure it out. And I think that this just go for it and just leave everything else behind is not good advice. And it's really pervasive. And I think that tapping into your nervous system and knowing, this leaving my job is not going to be good for my mental health. I would rather stay in my job. So you get the point, but
it's like your people, like what you described as like angel whispers or gut, you said breadcrumbs.
Yep.
Intuition, your gut feeling. Like people have different ways that they understand the same thing.
Prayer,
it's
a lot.
The same. It's an internal. As one person I heard call it like a deep knowing. Yeah. It's like something that you just know, like deep inside of you, and it's a part of, like when you mentioned earlier, like what's true. It's also a part of like your truth, or I know it's like a term that's very commonly used nowadays in different ways, but like it's a part of what is true for you, and you know it. And like you know that this particular thing is not working out, or that like, man, this dream that I have, like it's calling me and I need to start walking towards it. Like you just know. And then I also think that when there's something that you're gonna regret not doing. Like if I get the blessing or the ability to be on my deathbed and I get to live a long life, what am I gonna regret? Yeah. Like, am I gonna regret not going for this thing? Yep. Or not pursuing this thing, or not, and so going on the same track of fulfillment, you've traveled the world, you've seen different countries, cultures, and I have had the experience of staying pretty much within America, outside of the Caribbean. My dad's from Jamaica, my mom is from St. Kitts.
Cool.
I'm sure you heard of St. Kitts.
I didn't know
Caribbean.
That.
Yeah,
that's cool.
And so I've traveled there. I've been to Canada. But outside of that, I haven't been like across the Pacific Ocean, across the Atlantic Ocean, or even past the Caribbean to South America. you have, and just from your observations of different cultures and different people across the world, is there any particular culture or people that came across to you as, I guess, happy or more fulfilled than other people? I'm just curious, like what those people are like, and maybe what are some of the things that maybe led to you having those observations, or why they are that way.
Yeah, I've been blessed to be able to travel a lot. I've been to a lot of different parts of the world, and I think that it's funny because it's sort of you asked a question at the Love Letters live event that we had last week. Mm-hmm. And I think that
20 seconds of courage.
My answer, yeah, right. Yeah, from the podcast host. I think my answer is that I just see, everywhere I go, I kind of see a benevolent world, and it's it's gonna be a little bit of a more high level answer than maybe you're looking for, but sure. I think that what makes us happy is basically the same in all of the world. Yeah, which is, I think, breaking bread together. I find that people are really happy around a table with food.
I love that.
I think that people are really happy when they're in the natural world.
Yeah.
Swimming, splashing, sweating. I think that people are really happy when they have relationships that mean something to them. I think that people are really happy when they have work that's meaningful. I think people are really happy when they get to move their bodies. I think people are really happy when they feel good.
Yeah.
I think that that's a thing that is also not talked about enough.
That's
like, have you walked today?
Right.
Have you moved your body today at all?
Man, that's critical for me personally.
Well, I'm walking like
when I walked like 40 minutes to get here.
No, I walk like 5 to 12 miles a day.
Yeah.
Like, and I have to.
Yeah.
Have you gotten sunshine on your face?
Yeah.
It's simple. It's simple, but I think that it's pretty universal, right? Do you have someone you love? Do you have someone that loves you? Do you have a group of friends? Can you dance? I mean, do you have the other thing I'll say is, I think that it's when you get the opportunity, if you get the opportunity to travel, for me, it's always been, there's always a moment where I think, oh, wow, they do things so differently. So I think that a lot of the things that make us happy are the same, but I think that the way that societies are structured or that people live their lives, there's always a thing in every, like I remember when I went to India, I remember seeing, a lot of people don't have shoes or in a lot of places that you go into, you have to take your shoes off. I remember coming back to the United States. I was living in California, I lived in San Francisco. And I was at the ferry building for a farmer's market the day after I got back. I remember thinking like, wow, everyone here has shoes.
Wow.
So many shoes. And that was just this moment of like, do we need the shoe? Do we need shoes? Do we need as many pairs of shoes as we have? Do we need, And so there are things like that. And then the last thing I'd say about this question is that I think that it's good to just observe when you're traveling. I think that it's good to observe and assume you know really nothing and see what strikes you.
Yeah.
See what strikes you here. And, I do this like, it's almost like a sensory experience where I just pretend like I've just arrived to Earth for the first time. And it's really, cool I do it here too. I do it. Yeah. I try to do it as much as I can. But imagine if you were an alien that had just arrived to Earth. What would you see? And I do that when I travel a lot.
Interesting. Yeah.
And there's this, it's what I've been really fascinated with lately is just taking like 2 to 5, 10 minutes. And if I'm really disciplined, more than 5 minutes. Yeah. And I just watch. And then I tell the story of what I'm actually talking to myself. Like, okay, Darwin's got a cool hat. He's branded himself. He's got the hat. He's got the shirt. He's got the watch. That's a cool wedding ring. Like, I wonder what the story behind the wedding ring is. So it would be like if I go home tonight and I lay down in my bed and someone said, to paint me the picture of what it was like to sit with Darwin today, I could do it.
Wow.
And I think that 99.9% of people could not.
Wow.
not because I'm better or they're inferior, but because I think people aren't really taking a chance and taking a moment to observe all the good things around you. To your point about regret, I was thinking about when you were saying the regret on the deathbed. I was thinking about what is my regret? What would my regret be? I am always, I have kind of a strange relationship with death, but I would say that my regret, my fear, is that I will not enjoy what's here now. And so I make a really strong discipline around that. And I think that I am very grateful for what is happening to me in the moment. But I think that it's so, because I'm a very ambitious person and I have big dreams. Yeah. I think that unless I'm aware and disciplined around what is here right now and how can you celebrate what is here right now, it's kind of easy for me to get caught up in
like the next.
Yeah, the next. Yeah. It's always the next. And
living in the now that's power. That's how my brain summarizes like what you like. Even the alien coming to Earth, you being able to paint a picture like of this moment right now. It's because you're here. Yeah,
hyper presence.
Wow, I like that. Hyper presence. Yeah. It's like living in the now, but like living in the now, staying in the now, and then awareness of when you drift out of the now.
And also for me, it's also knowledge that I'm hyper present with you. Right? I'm not thinking about anything else. Really, I'm not. I'm here. I'm looking into your eyes. I'm hoping that people are listening are getting something. And I know that because of this hyper present moment, good things will happen in the future. Wow. So it's not siloed. It's not like if you're here now, then it ends now. Yeah. I actually think it's the opposite. I think that if you're super here now, then it's going to be even more expansive in the future.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's crazy, man. Yeah, because like life is richer that way.
Richer.
And life is richer, and it's like being in the now not only will make your experience, it will allow us to actually experience life the way that it's meant to be experienced, but then it will make the future richer because you're living a richer life. And I'll be honest, I struggle with that. Like, and I hope that my kids, with living in the now, I hope that my kids listen to this in the future. And that's part of the reason why I want to document my whole journey as a entrepreneur chasing my dreams. And I can be at home, like I leave here today, and say I get back home at around 3:30, 4 o'clock, and around 4:30 my wife comes home with the kids from school. I have 3 kids, so a 5-year-old, a 2-year-old, and then like a 1-month-old, right? Two older girls, and then the youngest is a boy, right? And my daughters come running up the stairs, daddy, and they want to show me like, something they made at school or tell me about their day. And I have a few moments where I'm just like with them. And then they want to go there. They want to go get a snack in the kitchen. So they go get a snack. And then I'm like, okay, back to work. And when I say back to work, like I'm on leave right now. Like I'm on paternity leave right now because we just had a baby. Mm-hmm. But like I've been working harder than ever. Like at my dream, at what I'm building here, and so it's back to work. I'm planning for the podcast. I'm this and that. I'm marketing. I'm social media. I'm building it. How do I monetize this? How do I, Yep. And so that to answer your question is why, it's because I get so, I'm also a very driven and future minded person. I get so focused on what's next, and then I'm terrified that if I don't put in the work now, I will not achieve what I want in the future. I will not experience the thing that I desire. I will never experience what it's like to live the reality that I dream of, Yep. And then that fear, it sucks me out of the now because I get so fixated on that. If that makes sense.
Well, I don't know if it's think about it this way. This could be another perspective. The first thing is it sounds like you're enjoying the work, right?
I love it.
So the now is the work.
Sure.
So when you're with the kids and you're hugging them, you're probably with the kids and hugging them. And then when you're working, which it may be 1 minute later, but you're working, but you're still present. You're just present with the work. The presence changes.
Yeah.
So it sounds like maybe your worry is that if you're present with the work, then you're not present enough with the kids, or if you're too present with the kids, you're not going to have the time for the work. I would say, I don't have kids yet, but I would say that, you know, my father was very, very involved and very active in my life, and I loved that.
Yeah.
I will also say my father was a hard worker, and I loved that. Yeah, so I think that, you know, there's, you might, you know, my brother's a big attorney in Chicago. He spends a lot of time with his kids, but he spends a lot of time working too. And, when I think about that, and when I think about parents that work a lot and that like what they do, I also think that that's a tremendous example that you're setting for your kids. Yeah. They may be too young to realize it now, but eventually,
it resonates, because same thing with my dad. Yeah,
you're like, I respect. I mean, I want time with the people that I love, but I also respect the fact that you're showing your kids it's okay to go for what you love. You're actually giving them a pretty sweet example. Yeah, and that through osmosis as they get older might be the best gift that you give them. And so instead of beating yourself up for how much you work, because you're not there for your kids in ways that maybe, you know, other traditional parents might be, it could actually be the greatest gift that you're giving them. And I'm sure that, get back to hyperpresence, I know, like, I watch parents with their kids, and the kids and both parents separately are on their iPhones. The 10-year-old kid's on his iPhone, mom's on her iPhone, and dad's on his iPhone at dinner. Yeah. And it's like, is that presence? Like, is that better than like everyone doing their own thing separately and not, you know? So in their minds, are they spending time together? You know? And so I think that's a way that I oftentimes think about. I think about a lot with my partner. We spend a lot of time together, but, you know, we work from home. So like 12 hours a day we're working from home. That's not actually time together. Right. I agree. So like, what does a date night look like? And even with friends that I see once a year for 2 or 3 days a year, never underestimate the power of a day or two of intense hyperpresence. Never underestimate that for what it can be.
Yeah, that's powerful. And you talk about, you know, you speak about relationships, and you said something earlier today about, like, or earlier in this interview. Like, breaking bread together is also like a major source of fulfillment, and it's like the togetherness, experiencing, I guess, connection with another human being. And as I find people fascinating. So when I get to research somebody before an interview, I really enjoy that part of things, you know. And I'm not like a social media stalker type of person, like, you know, but I do thoroughly enjoy learning about people, learning like why they do what they do, what has shaped them into who they are today. And I saw there was like a post that you did, like, I don't know, maybe a while ago, that of you and your sister. And you were just highlighting your relationship with her and how much you love her and you enjoy traveling with her, things like that. And even when as far as to, you know, call her like your soulmate because of how connected you guys are, and maybe how in sync you are, and even some of the things that you guys both love together, like love the same things. Like, I'm sure travel is one of them. And I also am very close with my sister as well. We're about 15 months apart. Nice. She's actually been on the podcast. Cool. You know, I didn't tell the listeners that it was my sister, but you know, they'll figure it out now. But, you know, and I can relate to that. You know, just feeling a synergy or a closeness, or, you know, a connection with somebody that is deeper than words can describe. And I'm just curious how your relationship with your sister and other people like that have shaped your experience in life, your fulfillment, as we talked about breaking bread together, and the man you are today.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I think, and there's a thought that I had before I'll answer the question, which was, you were saying that I was saying that breaking bread is important. I will call people out at dinner if they're on their phone. I used to we used to organize dinners, and we do a phone stack.
I like that, man.
Because it's just like, come on, we get an hour.
Like, we're here.
This is.
I love that.
If you have an emergency, obviously, if you have kids, whatever, like, it's within reason, but
We do
scrolling
that, by the way,
Instagram.
at home. Like
no phones.
Phone aside, laptop closed. Like we're there. Like I'm 100% with you.
Right. And I think that was a product of how I grew up as well. Like we didn't ever have a TV on during dinner. And we had dinner together as a family every night. And that's not realistic for everybody. But what I'm saying is we would do a phone stack. Go out to a restaurant in New York City. Phones are in the middle of the table, right. Upside down.
Right. Can't see.
And the first person that reaches for their phone pays the bill.
Ooh.
So you got 10 people out. No one wants that $2,000 bill, right?
I love that, man.
So
I love that.
Right. So that's one thing that I would say. It's not just about gathering. It's about gathering with presence.
Mm.
And for my sister, who is one of my all-time favorite people, and this is a perfect example. I see my sister. Sometimes I see her once every 3 to 6 months.
Right. Right.
And same with my parents. But I can tell you that my relationship with my family is so solid. And it's not about, I was reading last night, I think on Instagram or something, that see the time with your family with your parents in terms of visits, not years. So you think you got 10 years. If you see them twice a year, you actually got 20 visits.
Wow.
How would you approach a visit differently if you were going to see your parents 20 more times as opposed to 10 more years? Because 10 more years feels really expensive.
Like you have a lot of time.
20 visits does not feel like a lot. Right? And so I think about that a lot. And I approach family time like that a lot. And same with relationships. Like, I think that if you asked my friends, what is your favorite thing about Brian? I think that it would be that he's creatively challenged me to like live a creative life that is true for me, and he is super present when I'm with them and when I'm not with them. Because here's what that does, and this is kind of answering your question. If I'm really present with you, I'm listening to what you're saying, but I'm also listening to what you're not saying. I'm watching your actions, but I'm also watching like subtle things. And the deeper I know you, the deeper I can feel you. And that, for me, and I don't know if it's a gift or if it's something that I've developed, I'm not quite sure. I think it's probably just an intuitive genius that I was lucky enough to inherit. I feel the people that I love all the time. And to the point where I know when I need to reach out to them to give them some information that I've received, even if we haven't talked for a long time.
Yeah.
That's only possible because when I'm with them, it's so present. I mean, I'm listening to every word you're saying all the time.
Yeah.
So I think, how do I handle these relationships and how have they shaped me? I think that, they shape me in a ton of ways. I think that it's sort of like puzzle pieces. I see it almost like puzzle pieces. My life is one big puzzle, right? My master plan is one big puzzle. And I think that every single person drops in certain ways. And going back to the advice thing, I think that it's part of having a lot of relationships, and I'm lucky to have a lot of really deep relationships. I think part of that is knowing who to go to for what.
Yeah.
And when I say that, and going back to like, I think you already kind of know what you want, and you already kind of do what you want. If I want to go do something crazy, I know exactly that who I'm going to go talk to. That's going to give me permission to do that.
Yeah.
If I want to do something more calculated, I know which person to go to. But that's like, if you need it, right? And in some ways I still need it. And in some ways I've fully embodied my power. In some ways I haven't.
Yeah.
Like all of us, I think, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I admire people that have fully embodied themselves. I think that there are people that have fully embodied themselves, and I admire them deeply. Not too deeply, because you don't actually know. So, and that gets risky, right? Like, don't idolize anybody because you have no idea.
Yeah.
The people that so many people idolize, I know well, and it's like you would not be idolizing them if you actually knew them as well as I know them. So there's that. I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm saying they're amazing people, but the pedestal that you have them on is unreasonable.
Yeah.
And it's dangerous for you. And that's something that I also think doesn't get talked about enough. Like, you thinking that this person is the life that you want is dangerous because you actually don't know.
Don't know. Yeah.
So stay true to your own thing. The puzzle piece is, maybe you need a little push. We all need a little push sometimes. right? And so I call a friend and I don't want to travel somewhere, and I tell him all the story, and I hope that he says, don't go. You know that answer.
Yeah.
And so that's how they shape me. And also just, it's going back to your very first question or second question about the dreamers that don't take action. I think a lot of times the best things about the relationships that I have is they show me how to live.
Yeah.
They show me what life looks like for them. And there are always little pieces that you can integrate. That's my favorite thing about traveling. You come back from the Dominican Republic, you make coffee a little bit differently than you did before. You watch people, Turkish coffee. When I went to Lebanon, I came back from Lebanon and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to make coffee a little bit differently because I loved the coffee.
Yeah.
You don't start speaking Arabic every minute of every day when you come back, but you do small things. And I think that that's the same that I would say for relationships. I think that I watch my sister and I see something that she does that I think is really cool, and I do that.
Right.
I watch my best friend and he has a new instrument, and I'm like, okay, well, what new instrument should I play? And then I come in here and I see your setup and I think, okay, I wonder how can my setup be better?
Sure.
Up level. I think that's a beautiful part of friendship. How can we make each other better while still loving each other where we're at right now?
Yeah. I love that, man. And relationships are a critical and key part of life, existence, fulfillment. But as you mentioned, it's not just the relationships. It's not just baking bread. It's the hyper presence. It's living in the now so that you're actually enjoying those relationships and you're pulling from those relationships everything there is to pull, and then you're giving back to those relationships everything that you can give. You're giving your full self to them because you're fully there. You're fully present. And I'm going to say unfortunately, part of life is death. You said earlier that you have a strange relationship with death. Just curious what you mean.
I just don't want to die.
Yeah, I feel like
there's so much. I love this life so much, and there's so much I want to do, and there's so much I've done, and I just anytime I have luckily I've had really good health.
It's awesome.
Anytime I have anything that seems like it could be I freak out.
Yeah.
And that's not a good way to live. But I think that I love life. I love my friends. I love my partner. I love my parents. I love my family. I love this. I love my business. I love my career. I love it. I love the travel of the world. Yeah. And there's so much more that I want. And there's so much more that I want to contribute. Yeah. And I think that, I think back, I'm 41 now, and I think back to I've been living hard. I've been living hard for the last 20 years. 23 years, really, since I left my hometown. I have lived intensely, and I have done a lot of things. And I think that I was telling a couple friends last night, I went out for some social activity last night, and I was telling this guy, in my early 20s and in my 20s and early 30s, for some reason I was just convinced I was going to die really young.
Wow.
So I squeezed the lemon. I squeezed it all. And then something happened in my mid 30s where it flipped. And I was like, oh, actually I'm going to live a long time. But, kind of like that thing we were talking about earlier about how we have these little things that show us how it was like, oh, I'm going to live a long time. But I still had that experience where I thought I was going to die early and young. And so I know what that feels like. And that's driving kind of my action-oriented life.
Right.
And you can't, I don't want to let go of that. I actually like it how intensely I live. I'm fine with it. Yeah. I could probably find a little bit more balance and, but it's net positive, I would say. And also, so that's the first thing I would say about death. I'm really scared. I just don't want this to be over. And I think back, over the last 23 years that I've lived an intense life, and I have constant flashbacks to things that have happened. And I think to myself, this was really fun. That was really fun. That was really special. And so where I'm at now with my, heightened consciousness, if you will, is I am always trying to identify the moments in life that I would look back on in 5, 10, 15, 20 years fondly and I become hyper present to them now. So I don't have to reference them in the future to enjoy them for what they were.
Wow. That happens a lot.
A lot.
That happens a lot.
And like, I'm in it, and I'm like,
you don't enjoy the moment,
or you enjoy
in the future, you reference it, and that is like how you enjoy it in hindsight, like looking back.
And that's what I meant by I romanticize. Because sometimes in the future, it's easier to look back and pretend like it was something more than it was. What's even more powerful to me at this point in my life it's here now.
Okay, yeah.
No, it's here now.
Gotcha.
And I'm going to actually feel it for what it is in all of its richness and depth. And then when I reference it in the future, which I will because I'm a very nostalgic person,
sure.
It's true.
Wow. You're not like, oh, this is this beautiful moment, but I wasn't really there. I just got into a fight with my wife, and I was consumed in the argument still, and I wasn't really enjoying the moment.
Yep.
But it was my daughter's first recital or whatever it is. It's like, no, I was there.
You get it.
I enjoyed it.
You get it.
And
you know what else too, Darwin? I actually now I invite other people into that moment with me.
Yeah.
I say, hey, like let's just do it right now because I'm feeling it. Like Darwin, I'm really appreciating this conversation.
Me too, bro.
Like I'm in it with you right here.
Yeah.
And like we're gonna talk about it in the future, and we're gonna smile about it in the future. We're gonna laugh about it, and we're gonna think about all we've done in the last X amount of years. But right now, I'm in it, and I'm enjoying it. And you can do that with your family. You can do that with your friends.
Yeah.
And I found that like calling them out, these moments out in the moment.
Yeah.
Also gives other people permission to do that.
Yeah. It's like it pulls them wherever they are. It pulls them into the moment. And they're like, oh, snap. This is a moment. This is a moment. And it's like I think that we know, and I'm the same way, by the way, with death. Like we all have our ways that we see the universe, whatever we believe as far as like a higher power or faith or God or universe, energy, whatever it is. Like we all have what we believe as far as the supernatural and what we believe about life after death. But regardless, none of us have been. So at the end of the day, like there is an unknown element. If you love everything that's here in the now, why would I want to give this up?
Yep. Yep.
And there is a lot of that, a lot of the finiteness, my awareness of the finiteness of my existence that drives everything I'm doing. I'm like, man, like there's so many things I've done as far as like business is concerned, as far as like finance is concerned, that I'm terrified. I'm like, if something happened to me, I want my wife to be good. I want my kids to be good. But I'm terrified of leaving this earth too soon before I accomplish the things I want to accomplish, because I want to give that to my kids. I want to say, hey, look, like this is the example of pursuing your heart's desires, or this is a few, companies that I'm going to hand. You don't have to run them. They're already on their own. You can sell them, do whatever you want with them, but you're good. You can take stuff from this trust that I created for you, and you can borrow from it to then pursue your dream. If you want to travel the world and just paint, what you see or whatever you want to do, you can go and do that. And you have the freedom to do that because of what I've done in my life, in my existence. And so I'm right there with you. I mean, I am also terrified of death. And I am also aware of how much of that is a driving factor for what I do, and so I saw also on your, I was browsing your website, and I was like, man, like Brian Rashid Global is like, you guys do a lot, and it's impressive.
Thank
it
you.
Really is. And I saw, I was browsing through the section that highlights the one-on-one coaching, which you've already done in this session. But I wanted to also ask, so me being a person who is the leader and host of the Contagious Thoughts Podcast, that is not just a podcast, but a medium for dreamers to make their dreams into reality. So I don't want dreams to just stay dreams. I think it's a shame if a dream makes it to a deathbed or a grave and never actually got to be lived. That's a shame.
Yeah.
I don't curse on this podcast, so I'm gonna say that's a daggone shame. You know, and I desire for as many people as possible, as many dreamers as possible, to join this movement, not just so the platform can grow, but so that terrible thing does not happen to as many people as it could happen to. Dreams making it to a deathbed or grave without ever being lived. I'm going to ask for some on-the-spot, one-on-one coaching. What would you say to me? Like your strategy, your approach to one-on-one coaching, how you've helped CEOs and celebrity chefs and all the people that you've helped.
Mm-hmm.
I would love for you to give that to me and for our listeners to see that and hopefully apply some of the, it might not be the same exact scenario, they might be in a different space or different, but to apply the same mindset and the way you go about helping people to their own lives.
Okay. So let's start with a specific question.
Yep.
So you ask me a specific question about where you are right now that could use some unlocking to get you closer to the thing that you want.
Yeah. I have a massive dream.
Yep.
And the gravity and the weight and the importance of the movement, I believe, is massive.
Yep.
I'm one person. I have like kind of another person that's joined my team, but I'm one person.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the two things. One, that my dream and my goal, my vision is, it can feel like it's too big for a single person to go and accomplish. And so there's times it just feels overwhelming or crushing, or it feels like that. There's a famous piece of art of like that man like with a boulder, like he's like pushing up a hill, and it can feel like I have a boulder that I'm pushing up this mountain. And it's gonna, at any point in time, this thing can roll back and smush me, you know? And then the second thing is financially. A lot of these dreams take money. Even this podcast, I pour thousands of dollars into this podcast.
I'm sure.
There's a tipping point to where until the scale starts to go in the other direction where things are monetized, it's tough to keep on shelling out more money to make this thing a reality. And as we know, podcasts aren't just overnight, successes. Right. They and so there's other strategies and whatnot that I haven't that I'm pursuing to help that. But those feel like the bottlenecks for me now. Yeah.
So let's start with the first one. The first one is, and the reason I asked you to ask a more specific question is something that I think about a lot, which is, what would life look like if we asked better questions?
Wow.
Like how much quicker could we get to the heart of things if we just were more thoughtful about questions? I mean, you're very thoughtful about your questions, but I'm saying that's the first the first thing that I would say is that, right? So like if anyone's thinking about what is my thing, how do I move my thing forward, the first question is, what would a better question look like for you?
Yeah.
Second thing, let's start with your first pillar. The first pillar is, I feel like I'm pushing a massive boulder. This dream is big and it feels bigger than me, and sometimes it's overwhelming. Well, the question that I like to ask myself, and that I would ask if you were a client, I would ask you, is what would this look like if it was easier? Because that's in the society where we want everything to be so productive, and that productivity oftentimes leads to like a lot of unnecessary work. In the name of working hard, because we want to work hard because we've been sort of brainwashed and thinking that that's the only way that you make it. I believe in hard work, but I also believe in smart work.
Yeah.
And so what would it look like if it was easier? That would be my first question for you. Like, what systems could be simplified? What systems are not actually doing anything for you? What systems could be completely cut out? Think about it as trimming the fat, right? If I could trim the fat, what would it look like? So that's, for you and for anybody else that's listening that's got something going on that feels big.
Yeah.
And trimming the fat might look like, I don't need to do the podcast every day. I could do it once a week. I don't need to do it every week. I could do it once a month. Trimming the fat could be like, actually, I don't maybe need to rent out this studio. Maybe I could do it at home, and maybe I could, invest in 2 really nice $200 microphones, and that's all I need right now. Trimming the fat could look like a number of different things, right? It could look like that's number one.
Yeah.
What would it look like if it was easier? Because you don't want to feel like you're pushing a massive boulder up a hill. It's not a fun way to operate life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You want to feel like you're flowing down a river.
Right.
So I would say flip the imagery in your mind. If that's the artwork that you associate with your current flow, then let's flip the flow.
Yeah.
And let's get back into a river or into a wave of an ocean, or and how would that look if we could just flow more?
Yeah.
And it's not you don't do anything and you sit around and you meditate and good things happen. No, it's you got to keep things going, but what would it look like? The second piece is the financial piece, and it's really responsible to ask about that, right? And I think that's something that, again, I'm noticing today that I'm saying we don't talk about enough. So there's a lot. I think there's a lot that no one's, and because I am an entrepreneur that's been writing my own, that's been funding my own life through my work for the last more than a decade, I feel like this is a conversation that is important and that I wish people had with me earlier. But you need money. You need your idea needs to be monetized.
Yeah.
For you to do that for a living. It's just basic knowledge that no one for some reason wants to talk about.
Yeah.
I lived in Austin, Texas for a while, and I was like, how do any of these people, I love Austin, but I was like, how do any of these people pay their bills? None of them are making any money. But they're all talking about their businesses. But then I'll ask them about money. Oh, it's not important. It's like, I don't know in what world it's not important if you're actually operating a business and you have 3 kids and a wife, right?
Yeah,
and you have ambition to leave things for them. So I think having a conversation around finances is important, and people are shying away from it for some reason. But I am not a money-driven person by any means. I'm a heart-centric entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But I recognize that I have bills to pay, and so do you, and so does everybody that wants to start a business full time. So what I would say is there's 2 things. There's 2 thoughts. The first thought is maybe you shouldn't do it alone. You said you have someone coming in. My hope for you and anyone that's listening that has someone else coming in is that their skill sets are totally different than yours. So if you have another Darwin coming in, unless the issue is that the business is working really well financially, but I just need more creative help, and I need more, whatever the skill sets that you think you have are, unless you need to scale those, it doesn't actually make sense for you to have another Darwin come in. Now, if you're saying, I love the creative process, I don't like the sales, and you have a great salesperson coming in, then that's a really good combination. So that's usually what I find with creatives. And, I don't know where you fall on this in terms of what you know. Usually creatives are bad at business development. Usually creatives just want to create. Artists want to create art. They don't want to sell it. Business people usually, good salespeople usually, I don't want to say always, usually don't have creative talent. I think what I've been really lucky and blessed with is I have both. I'm highly creative, but I'm also an amazing salesperson.
I work full time in sales.
Yeah. Okay. So you're a good salesperson, but you're also a good creative because you're doing this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So in your case, you have to figure out like which one of those do I want to spend more time on?
Okay, I see what you're saying.
If you're good at both of them and you want to make more money, then you need to decide which one am I better at, which one do I enjoy more.
Yeah.
And if you enjoy the sales more, then maybe you outsource a little bit, or you partner with someone that wants to do more creative, and vice versa. The second thing I would say for this podcast, if I were you, and if I were based in Bethlehem, I would be going after sponsors aggressively. Like there's no reason, and I don't know what your numbers look like, but there's no reason that you can't get 5 businesses to throw in $1,000 a month. There's no, like, that's... you call out, you get I don't know, you get lit, you get Toastique, you get I don't know. I'm making these, these are places that I like in the area. You go to the bars. I mean, there I would be asking 100 businesses a week that you align with.
Yeah.
If they would be interested in doing a pilot sponsorship for the next 6 months.
Wow.
And then you can think about what that looks like for them. Like, what does that get them? Because you're doing a lot of social media stuff too, right? So
yep.
Maybe brand exposure is enough. Maybe you do pop-ups at their places. Maybe you start recording your podcasts in, like, Toastique has a back room. Maybe you rent with her and you do some sort of exchange. Like, I don't know. There's all kinds of, so the first piece of the second pillar is bring in how would it look if it was easier? Bring in someone that does things that you don't want to do, that you need to be able to grow financially. And the third piece is, again, start with where you are. What's around you? Get more creative, get more out of the box. People are thinking I'm not saying you, I'm saying people are thinking in the box. There are probably 5 to 10 businesses right now that you could work out some sort of partnership with, whether it be free space, whether it be, and then all of a sudden this like $2,000 a month, I'm making that number up, but $2,000 a month is gone because you have a space, and all you have to do is put their name on your content.
Right.
Now, now you get 2 other businesses to give you $1,000 a month. Now you're making $2,000 a month. And early on in a process, $2,000 a month is a great start.
Yeah.
And then that's $5,000. And then as your numbers grow, that sponsorship grows. And then all of a sudden, maybe you get to a place where, conscious thoughts. Maybe what's the insight timer? Is that the meditation?
Thoughts.
The contagious thoughts.
Yeah, you're good.
Maybe insight, you could do something fun where you could go to a soap brand.
Yeah.
You could go to Dr. Bronner's and you could say like, hey, I know you're a radical dude. Like, this was a radical company. You are all about the people. Yeah. I'm all about the people. Contagious thoughts.
Yeah.
People start thinking about, like, did I wash my hands? Did I wash my thoughts? Like, you could go with an ethical, soap brand, Dr. Bronner's or Jason or, one of these companies. Yeah. And you could say, would you like to sponsor my show?
Right.
Right. And then here's the other piece. And then, this is what I'll say for this. The other piece is you are a media creator.
Yeah.
Right. So you could go to Dr. Bronner's, for example, and you could say, hey, Contagious Thoughts Podcast. I want you to sponsor it. Here's what we'll do. We do a weekly show. And if your numbers are small, that might not be interesting to them. So you got to think about, something more. And we'll put together this campaign for you,
right,
Dr. Bronner's, where you have every single guest talk about a moment of purity or a moment of, like, when did I go from, what was my contagious thought this week? And you can put together an actual, like, video campaign that with the right partnership could go crazy for both of you.
Yeah.
You get a viral video up with Dr. Bronner's, and all of a sudden, number one, they're happy with you. They probably up the ante of what they give you. Number two, your brand grows, which means more money. And number three, you can use that to go to other people to get more as a track record of success.
Yeah.
That's what I'd say. Just off the cuff,
Man. That's crazy, man. Wow. I'm probably going to replay this part of the episode several times.
Timestamp. Where are we at?
I know it. Dude, seriously, man. And so, wow. With that, I think it's time to transition into the no regrets segment of
Let's do it.
This show.
Come on. Hey.
So the no regrets segment of the show is where myself and the guest in the past used to listen back through the entire episode.
Wow.
And then give our answers to these two questions, which is one, is there anything that we said in the show that we regret saying? And number two, is there anything that we did not say in the show that we wish that we did say? And so the listeners know this, but I've stopped doing the whole send the, I do my edits and I send it to the guest. They listen to the whole thing. Then I got to go back and record it.
No.
We just do it live now. So
make
we
it
just
easier.
do it live now.
Yeah.
It's so much easier in post-production.
Right.
So I will flip that question to you. Is there anything that you said in the show that you regret saying, even if it's how you said something?
I think the first thing I said about I think everyone's kind of doing what they want to do, I regret saying only because I think that without more context, it's misleading.
Okay.
And so when I said that, what I meant was I think that we should all. So if I'm going to reframe it because I regret saying it.
Okay, I
So
like it. I
can
like
do that.
Yeah, you can.
I'm going to reframe it as I really do think that everyone is doing their best right now.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think that when you want to be doing more.
Yeah.
And you should go for that.
Yeah.
Like you should really go for that.
Yeah.
So that would be one thing that I regretted saying, because I don't want to give people a pass.
Sure.
When they know that they want to be doing more than they're doing.
More. Yeah.
In the name of like everyone's doing what they want.
Yeah.
And the second part was
the second question is there anything that you did not say during the show that you wish you did say?
I would just like to acknowledge you.
Okay.
For your bravery, for
Thanks,
your courage,
man.
and for the fact that you're going for it.
Thanks, man.
You know, I can't imagine what it's like to have 3 kids and like be starting something. Like it was already hard enough when it was just me.
Yeah.
And I was 28 and like living in a small studio apartment and like very low overhead.
Yeah.
So I think that the thing that I want to say is just keep going.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
And I'm proud of you, and I can feel your dedication. You know, on my way over here, I said, you're going to be ready on time. And I feel that I'm going to be received warmly.
Wow.
Because our interaction has been that. I think that you take great pride in doing a great job.
Thank you.
You take great pride in your work. You take great pride in treating people with respect and dignity. And you have amazing energy. And I think that you'll figure the rest of it out.
Yeah.
You'll figure the rest of it out. But I think that my quick intuitive hit with you is just don't wait too long to figure the rest of it out.
Yeah.
Because you're so good, you're so genuine, you're so trusting that I think that my only like intuitive hit with you right now around just like a warning.
Yeah.
You know, a warning in like not a scary way, but like
No,
a
please.
warning is like you already have what you need. You don't need to develop much more. A lot of people are like, well, I'm still and a lot of people need to continue to develop before they're kind of ready.
Yeah.
You're ready. You don't need to keep practicing. Like you're ready. Start going for the asks. Like start really shift into this place of like, it's right now where I'm going to make this work as a business for real.
Yeah.
You're ready.
Wow. Man, that's crazy. There's some things I'm going to share with you when we stop pressing record. That's so crazy that you just said that. And then for the listeners, I will also share with you guys in the Patreon. So Patreon, what is that, might you ask? Well, if you join the Contagious Collective, that is a Patreon group where you pay $5 a month and you get insight into my personal journey as an entrepreneur. And I share little nuggets that I don't want to say on the microphone in front of everybody that we put on all the main platforms, but I want to share it with just the folks that are in my kind of back corner, the listeners who are kind of my exclusive VIP listeners. So I will also share it with you guys. Keep a lookout for that on Patreon coming up in a couple weeks. So after this recording airs. So,
and can I just say something about Patreon?
Please.
If you're listening to this show and you have $5 a month to like if you're drinking Starbucks coffee, then take one day a month and don't drink it. And what Darwin is doing is a lot of work. And if you're a creative, you get it. And if you're not a creative, then you might not know. Producing these shows is so much work. And the return on that work is such a slow burn.
Yeah.
And if you can support a creative in their attempt and execution of goodness in the world, please do that. And I know it's something that's harder like for us to ask for people to support us as creatives. So I'm telling you, as a creative, if you get anything, and even if you don't get anything out of this, it really means a lot to us as creatives when people say, you know, I see you and here's how I see you.
Yeah.
It means a lot.
Yeah.
And I subscribe to some Patreons, and sometimes I read the stuff they put out, sometimes I don't.
Yeah.
But this is a lot of work, and this is a lot of effort, and it's not free. Yeah. And it doesn't, you know, and that's, I think, a misconception. Like, this is a cute project. This is cute.
Right.
No. This is like a lot. Like, you've done so much work in preparation for this interview, which I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
And it's all to, you know, help people live their dreams. But it's also like, you're listening to this. You're energetically, it's nice for you to contribute in that back and forth between the creative and the consumer. And you have the power to really kind of like show it. You can be a breadcrumb. You can be a breadcrumb that shows us that this is something that, you know, you want to keep doing.
Wow. I'm not going to argue with the man. Everything he just said. I appreciate that, man.
Yeah.
And my answer to this question, the one thing that I do regret saying is saying your last name incorrectly in the beginning of the interview.
That's okay. Happens
so like,
all the time.
You know, I guess you know, and for me, it's like, oh, well, there's resources out there. Like, someone's name is a little unique because if it's like a word you want to pronounce, you can just like Google that, and there's like these videos that are like, you say it like this, and it like spells it out for you and sounds it all out. Someone's name, you got to do a little bit more digging. Like, you have to like go look at some videos where they were introduced, or like, you know, a little more digging. But anyway, so that's one regret. Then, but you know, Brian's very gracious, so I know it's not a big deal. But you know, anyways, then anything that I did not say that I wish I did say, that's probably gonna come to me when I re-listen to this. I'm probably gonna have something. Right now, I feel like I said everything that I wanted to say, asked all the questions that I wanted to ask. I'm looking at my notes on this ginormous tablet that's actually a laptop. And honestly, like, you know, maybe there was like a couple, you know, questions. We would have been here for like another hour if I asked everything I wanted to ask, you know, but maybe there's a couple of like, I really like to talk about people's like upbringings and childhoods, and like just to get a sense of like what shaped you. So maybe there's some stuff in that area that I wish we had, you know, way more time to like dive into, but you know, maybe sometime in the future, who knows. So that would really be it for me. But guys, with that, catch you guys next time. And Brian, thanks so much for coming on the show, man.
Thank you, Darwin, for having me.
I'm gonna get up and give you a proper hug, but like, dude, when I say it's a pleasure, a major understatement.
Feelings mutual.
Like, major understatement, man. Like, this was phenomenal, dude. Thank you for coming.
Thank you
on
for
the show,
having
man.
me. I really appreciate
absolutely,
it. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right.